basically...
Perhaps I treated you too harshly.
Yeah, we might have jumped the gun on this one, guys. Hello there then, my fellow Season 3ers. I wanted to take a moment to talk the Seneschal, especially now we've had the emergency band-aid patch applied and we can actually level the stones and get a real idea for how good or how not good it is. I'm level 100 now, so it's doing all the scaling it should be. I have nearly every stone at level 10, certainly the ones that matter. Sadly, I have not been fortunate enough to get evernight or Genesis, despite doing, at this point, about 50 Echo of Malphases. But fortunately, neither of them are complicated effects, and we can see exactly what they're going to do when you have them. They don't need testing, so that's all well and good. The point is really to sort of summarize what I'm about to get into is, yeah, the Seneschal actually is really strong. Now, I'm not going to say the word good because that's a little bit more subjective, and you might look at little robot companion running around and think, okay, it could make me a god damage-wise, but I still think it's kind of a boring way to do it, and that would be completely fair enough. I do, however, want to say that ignoring proper stone combinations, ignoring grinding them, ignoring Echo of Malphas, and not worrying about Evernight or Genesis, at least character power-wise, would be a huge mistake. I've had a lot of people message me saying, why are you doing so many Echo of Malphases? The stones are kind of pointless. The Seneschal doesn't really do anything. Who cares? And it's like, actually, no, it is really important, and everyone should care. So that's kind of what I want to get into here. So the easiest way to start this is to look at what it still isn't good at, which is being a source of literal damage itself. If we're looking at the actual, offensive attacks that they can do, they're not exactly blowing anything away damage-wise. Their numbers are just kind of low. What we care about in these governing stones is the mechanics of how it applies the attack, and in some cases, like Focus Fire, the fact that it's technically a type of damage, like fire damage. I've built here then an example of generally the best kind of offensive Seneschal you could have. Impale and Tempest are up there. There's an argument to be made of something like Firefly with maybe multi-shot, but generally this is kind of it. We have Swift, so the big damage Impale goes off more often. We've got the actual critical strike damage of the Impale up by 75% multiplicative, which sounds like a lot. It's actually gonna do bleed too, and then the enemies take more damage while they are moving, which in Target Dummy's case isn't huge, but at least it does make the Seneschal do more damage. We've got it so that the Seneschal will make it vulnerable, so it then does more damage. The delayed extra explosion of damage, which again on Target Dummy isn't huge, but it is there. We've got burning, so that it does bonus critical strike damage to the burning enemies, which coupled with devastation should see some nice numbers. Tempest itself adds a lot of constant damage ticking over. The point is, this is basically as good as it gets, like 90% of the way there when it comes to Seneschal offensive pure numeric output. And as we'll see, it's still a little bit on the anticlimactic side of things if we just kind of leave it there damaging. Like, I don't think it's doing an awful job. Like, the boss is dying, right? Like, it's going to get through it in, a couple of minutes, maybe a little bit longer. But I want to stress that the Seneschal isn't here to kill things. I mean, it will kill like random normal white trash mobs fairly well with a setup like this, but it's wasting its potential, and its potential is sky high. So if we kind of just wipe away using it to literally kill things, what are we left with? Well, let's actually go over that. Unlocking the true potential of the Seneschal and why it's arguably, in fact likely, stronger than even the vampiric powers were once it's fully online, we need only go to a single governing stone, Flash of Adrenaline. By default, this is 8 seconds out of every 20, you do 20% more multiplicative damage, which is nice, but it's not, like, crazy. The uptime's really bad, the actual increase is, yeah, it's okay, it's multiplicative, so that's nice, but it's not a crazy amount. But when you actually tune this up, I mean, how would you like to permanently 100% uptime do 50% multiplicative damage on everything that you do, no matter your build? At that point, wow, that is insane. So how do you achieve that? And to really hammer home how big that is, one of the best Sorceress items, Talrash's, that is in every build no matter what because it's too good to ignore, caps out at 45% multiplicative damage increase on everything that you need, and it is conditional. Yes, it's mostly up 100% of the time, but it's still conditional. So the Seneschal is 50% always unconditional. That is, yeah. So we tune it then with your duration, so it now lasts 12 seconds instead of the 8, and then as you might expect, we then give it tactical, so the cooldown is now 12 seconds, and it lasts 12 seconds. So it's now permanently up, and a permanent 20% multiplicative, yeah, that feels a lot better, but I said 50, and as you might expect, that comes from when you get Genesis, which is why you really should farm Echo of Malphas, because when Genesis goes in there, yeah, 20% by the 150% increase is 50% permanent multiplicative. That by itself is ludicrous, even if we ignore the other side that you can still fill out to do other better things with. So let's assume this is done, tactical, duration, flash of adrenaline, and Genesis. That is pretty much going to be in 90% of players' standard slot for any build and kind of unchanging. So yeah, the argument that it's boring certainly can still be made. You're not going to feel it like attack speed from Ravenous, which you really felt because you could see this is just going to make your numbers bigger. A lot bigger, like insanely bigger, but it's still not something you feel is mechanically different. But it is powerful, and that's the point of this entire conversation. Very powerful. So on the other side of things, what are you best doing? Well, if you don't actually need any help living, which you probably don't if you've got a normal solid build, we want to put an attack in. What attack makes the most sense? Well, because we don't care about the damage, we just care about the attack doing your tuning effects as much as possible, because that's what matters. It's really hard to choose anything other than Tempest. Tempest happens constantly. It's just zap, 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 zap. So anything you put in here will have 100% uptime with Tempest at range. That is very, very good. The others aren't terrible. Focus fire if you do need fire damage, and there are some options here, but the melees generally kind of fall flat with its quite bad AI, and the other ranges just aren't as good as Tempest. So let's actually go to the tuning then. Well, things can get quite simple here. Something like resource support, which simply gives you resource whenever it does damage. I mean, it makes you have infinite mana. Like, straight up, or infinite whatever you need. If I just start firewalling away here, I am not going to be able to ever spend enough mana to outdo what my Seneschal is doing. And I don't really have any other mana help going on in the build. The build, by the way, Firewall Meteor, is up on the channel, went up yesterday, just saying, if you like the look, it's very fun, very strong. But if I take out resource support and then start actually casting Firewall, you will see I'm now going to run out of mana. That is how potent it is. Infinite resource passively from your companion? I mean, yeah, that's not bad at all now, is it? So that's something to definitely be aware of if you are playing a resource-hungry build. So then we're just going to go through the other tuning stones and why you might use them and why they are so potentially potent. Let's start with the big one, Evernight. +4 to all your skills. That's roughly a 20% damage increase on an offensive skill, and because of how often Tempest fires, yeah, this is 100% uptime when paired with Tempest on this side of things. that's awesome. Like, that's just Shaco happening. And yeah, go farm Echo of Malphas, get Evernight, put it in here with Tempest, get Genesis, put it in here with Flash of Adrenaline, and you've got permanent +4 to all skills and permanent 50% multiplicative damage increase. Need I say more? But all the others still have a lot going for them. Swift isn't really necessary because Tempest happens fast enough anyway. Slowing if you need slow. Efficiency is great, just here's 15% crit chance permanently passively for you and your main build. Any crit hungry build, this is hard to pass up. 15% is a good chunk, especially a non-conditional increase to your crit chance, and worth considering. Bone Spear, Necros like this, a lot of sorcerers like this, as a lot of our builds are crit heavy. Then you've got the add effect to enemies, and with Tempest, because it spreads to the enemies as you kill them, it will just hit all of them. Technically, you could do something like putting on arcane support with it, which will make it hit, 11 enemies every blast, but that's just way overkill. It's not really necessary, but you can certainly do that if you really want to go crazy. But yeah, getting something like Frigid is great for a sorcerer because it activates Hoarfrost, and you can do more damage to chilled enemies without you needing a source of chill yourself. Something like Bleeding for a bleed barb might come in handy, or you've got Poison for a poison rogue, a way of getting a status that you either want as much of as possible, or you would like, but there's no space or way for you to fit it in your build that isn't clunky. The Seneschal's now doing it. And this is the obvious stuff. This is the stuff that we could do before it got buffed in the patch, and we could actually level our stones to relevant numbers. Then we have Devastation, which is kind of whatever, because it's for Seneschal damage, and Seneschal damage is terrible. Mockery is whatever, the AI isn't really good enough for it. Resource equals infinite resource. I mean, 19 every time the Seneschal does damage? That's so silly. Then, Burning, again, a lot of builds like enemies to be on fire, Sorcerer especially, and this kind of does that, and it frees up one of our enchantment slots if you're going to go down that route. It's actually quite difficult to only choose free. I've gone from at the start of the season thinking, I guess I'll just shove these in, whatever, with my level 2-3 stones, despite grinding all day every day for a week, to now that they're all level 10 and actually showing what they can do, I really don't know what to choose. Breaking is probably one of the MVPs. Remember how we loved vampiric powers? The combination of a cursed touch and the vulnerable one to make it so every enemy was always vulnerable, prey on the weak. Well, this is that, but actually better and easier to apply, and it only takes up one of your now 8 slots instead of 2 of your 5 vampiric power slots. You put breaking support alongside Tempest, and every enemy is going to be vulnerable all of the time. And if you're a class like Sorcerer that has kind of awkward vulnerables, even with the buff to Lightning Spear, you've still pretty much got Frost over at close range. This is huge, and we can actually play reliably into vulnerable synergies and damage increases. That is really, really good. Registered damage is whatever. Fortify is fantastic. If you care about being fortified, this will keep you fortified pretty easily, passively, constantly. The same with Safeguard. 15% damage reduction permanently, just because this is in. That's a huge chunk. That's the strength of a glyph being activated on your Paragon board. Then you've got the usuals that just kind of increase how well it applies the thing, so they're not as crazy as it's already applying well enough by itself due to how it actually works. But you see what I mean then? Permanent vulnerability, infinite mana, +4 to all skills forever, 50% multiplicative damage forever, applying any given effect that you need. Bottom line, the Seneschal does and can do a lot, and I want to stress, don't ignore it. Have a proper read and experiment, but generally speaking, Flash of Adrenaline duration, tactical with Genesis. Always have that on every build unless you need something very specific to make you turn away from it, and then probably Tempest with whatever 3 effects best benefit your character. I would heartily recommend Infinite Resource and Infinite Vulnerable, and then whichever third is best for you, but of course you know best for your class and build. End of the day, Seneschal numerically is super effective and competitive with vampiric powers. it's still a little bit anticlimactic in its implementation. It's AI, the fact it's a pet, it's not the most, it's fine, it's a little robot. I could totally understand why you don't like it thematically and how it actually does its things, but I just really wanted to get out there publicly that numerically, don't ignore it, because you will have a much better time at doing the seasonal content, especially Gauntlet when it comes out, and you need every drop of power you can get if you farm out your Seneschal and apply it like this. For now then, ladies and gentlemen, like if you've enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell for more, consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below, and until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.